Hello and welcome to another episode of Parker's Previews, powered by The Hammer. This is a show where I'm going to take data, advanced stats, and analytics to talk about interesting college football matchups so that we can be better consumers of college football content and smarter investors as we approach some of these bets. Yesterday, you saw a video where I talked about NC State Clemson, a big ACC matchup. You can get that on YouTube. Find the video. You can get that anywhere you get podcasts. Just search Parker's Previews, and you can find it there. As well, make sure you're following Parker's Previews on Twitter, at Sets of War on Twitter. That's where I'm posting graphs, charts, info, thoughts about games as well. So you could find me over there. Additionally, today we're going to move across the country, move out of the Southeast and out west to the West Coast. We're going to talk about Washington heading to UCLA. This game opened at Washington -3. It has since moved down to 2.5, back up to 3.5. I think it's currently settled at 3 across the board. No variation there. A little bit of variation in odds. Some places you can get at 105 or even money. I see 106 and 107 as well. So it's not just 110. So there's a little bit of value there as well. And the total started at 65, has gone up to 66. 64% of the bets are on Washington. 56% of the money is on Washington there. So an interesting matchup. Seems like the public's a little bit undecided. I like this Washington team. I think they've done a good job this season so far. They bring in Kalen DeBoer from Fresno State. He is a pretty sharp coach, and it looks like they really needed a culture change after a pretty abysmal season last year where they had no run defense to speak of whatsoever, and they had a loss to FCS Montana where Montana just ran the ball. There was no turnovers or weird plays. It was just Montana ran the ball all over them. So they definitely needed a little bit of a change of pace. They bring in Michael Penix from Indiana to reunite with DeBoer, who used to be the offense coordinator at Indiana, and he looks like he has been pretty good. We'll talk about his numbers here in a second. And UCLA under Chip Kelly has had a little bit of an up and down season. Big win over a bad Bowling Green and Alabama State. A game against South Alabama they should have lost, and then they get an effective bye week last week playing Colorado, where they get to work out some kinks. They went 45-17, looked pretty good. Dorian Thompson-Robinson back at the helm for them. So a pretty strong rebound after that South Alabama game where they maybe should have lost that game. If I look at these two teams, I have UCLA as the 13th overall in EPA and adjusted EPA margin. That's a down-to-down efficiency, offense minus defense. And I have Washington as 28th. So a little bit of a drop off there for Washington. Some of that is a little bit inflated. They did let Michigan State hang around kind of after they were ahead. So the opponent adjustments don't exactly account for that game context there, but generally pretty smart or pretty sharp comparison between two Pac-12 teams who are of similar quality, I think, on the aggregate. But there's a couple matchup specifics that really make me like Washington here. So my official play is going to be Washington minus about minus 2.5, -3, -3.5 even. I would take this up there. Anything under kind of four and a hook, I think, is a pretty good value bet. So in terms of raw EPA, we have Washington at 17th, UCLA at 10th. That's bolstered by UCLA's really, really good offense and a pretty solid, okay defense. Washington's offense, 11th overall, moving the ball really well, but 83rd on defense. So a little bit lower for their defense, driven by a little bit of passing efficiency that they've given up. They're 91st in EPA per pass on defense. But again, some of those numbers are a little bit confusing if you look at what Washington has done this season with their schedule. The game state really dictated a lot of that. So in terms of net points per drive, Washington averaging 4.41, just absolutely scoring at will. They're holding opponents to 2.22. That's almost 70th in the nation. UCLA has been scoring pretty well as well, 4.19 net points per drive on offense and 1.79 on defense. So little bit of separation. Again, that doesn't account for opponent, and so that does change just a little bit overall with what we count for opponent adjustment and everything. But remember that net points per drive is just looking at efficiency before and after, like every drive, and it takes the probability they make a field goal plus any touchdowns you score. So it's a little bit more in expectation than in reality. UCLA, both teams really pass heavy. UCLA 23rd in rush rate over expected. Washington is 10th with 41.9. So both teams are very pass heavy moving forward. And Washington actually with a little bit better game control, a little bit better opportunities. They're 63.4, which is 12th in echo ratio. And UCLA is 14th at 62.0. So pretty even, slight favor to Washington there. Washington's offense, I think, is a really interesting unit. Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback, has just been absolutely plagued with pressure and poor offensive line play and maybe lack of some outside playmakers at Indiana after their 2020 season. But he really, has grown and is really slinging the ball at Washington. Looks pretty good. Has a 90.2 pass grade at PFF. He's 63.9% completion, 12 touchdowns, 1 interception, 9.6 yards per play on an ADOT of about 10.9. So getting the ball downfield, moving the ball well. If you look at pressure and what they've asked him to do, he's only been pressured on 17.8% of his dropbacks. He was pressured north of 30, almost 40% of his dropbacks at Indiana. So absolute change for him. And he's looking really, really good in balls 20 yards downfield. He's 50% completion, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 91.1 PFF grade. So a pretty rejuvenated Michael Penix Jr. for Washington's offense. They're 7th in EPA per pass, very efficient there, and they're 11th in passing success rate. So when your efficiency and your explosiveness are kind of matching each other, that just is very indicative of a high quality unit. High volume passing, right? 10th in rush rate over expected, and high efficiency passing is always a good formula. UCLA's defense is pretty balanced in terms of run pass, 31st in EPA per pass, 49th in EPA per rush. So no obvious split there. Again, these are not adjusted for opponents, so you'd think that would be a little bit worse with how they've played against South Alabama, for instance. Washington, 78.4% of their drives are ending in quality possessions. UCLA actually has a little bit of a problem with this. 67th in quality possession rate allowed. That's they're 50% of opponent 50% of opponent drives in a quality possession. But although Washington's finishing them really well, 5.31 points per, UCLA is pretty good at stalling you out, 3.40. They're also not getting beat by kind of the big explosive play, which maybe that's more concerning that against South Alabama they were getting beat by sustained drives. But another thing that kind of tips scales in Washington's advantage, they're 24th in starting field position, whereas UCLA is 70th. And they're really, really balanced between early downs and late downs. 13th on early downs, EPA, 11th on third and fourth down success. And UCLA's defense actually a little bit worse on fourth downs than they are on early downs. 17th on early downs EPA, but 43rd on third and fourth down success. So I think that Washington's going to be able to spread the ball and challenge UCLA's defense in a way they haven't been challenged. I think Washington with Michael Penix is able to keep him relatively pressure free and work the offense. I think they'll avoid these negative game situations on third and long, and they'll be able to convert third downs and sustain drives against UCLA. On defense, I am a little bit wary of that defensive explosiveness allowed by Washington. That's certainly a far cry from last year. But if you look at their success rate, they're 49th against the pass, 39th against the rush. That's at this point of the season, that's just 1 or 2 big plays. So not as worried about what that 91st in EPA per pass looks like. UCLA, on the other hand, 12th in the EPA per pass on offense, but 59th against the rush. So the rush game it's going to be important, I think, for UCLA, and Washington has relatively shown that they can stop it. More evidence that Washington's gotten burned by a couple big plays. They're really good at echo rate, at quality possession rate, 45.2% of opponent possessions and in a quality possession, but 4.93 points per quality possession. UCLA actually a little worse at finishing opportunities than they are generating opportunities. 4th in Eckel rate, 48th in points per Eckel. So again, a couple big plays have burned Washington, but UCLA hasn't really shown that consistent big play threat. I think that will iron out a little bit as the season goes. Again, Washington very good on the coachable stuff, field position. They're really good at early downs EPA. They're 20th overall. UCLA's offense is 19th on early downs EPA. One thing that's a little bit worrisome is that Washington's defense is 94th in 3rd and 4th down success. Now, because of who they've played and how well they've played, those 3rd downs are also like 3rd and short. And so a lot of time they're really not, the sample size is an issue there overall. Looking at UCLA's offense, they've scored decently well. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is having what I would say is another pretty good career year. I think he's a little underrated overall. This is his fifth year starting, which is just crazy. 8.2 yards per attempt is above his career high. 74.1% completion is above his career high by almost 13 points. 8 touchdowns to only 1 interception, but one of his lowest graded passing seasons on PFF, 62 passing grade compared to 74 last year. He's had 3 turnover-worthy plays. That's about right in line with his historical averages. But his average depth of target is only 5.3. So UCLA, as of yet, has not really figured out a way to get the ball downfield. They are a little bit of, just tossing the ball here and there. Chip Kelly has a very interesting offensive scheme, but I don't know that that's going to get any better against Washington. I think that Washington's pass defense is a little bit of a liability, but because UCLA hasn't been able to challenge lesser defenses, I think that they won't be able to totally exploit this Washington defense. So Washington should win this. I could see this being within a score. I have this up to about almost 7 points. So anything above 4 and a hook, I think is probably a little too much for me to play for Washington here, but 3.5, 3, 2.5, wherever you can get that. I like Washington to cover this spread against UCLA in a really fun Pac-12 matchup. Thanks so much for tuning in. This has been Parker's Previews powered by The Hammer. Make sure you're following the channel on YouTube, subscribe to wherever you can get your podcasts from, and follow Parker's Previews on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Stats of War. I'll be posting games, thoughts, graphs, charts, all that for the rest of the week. I'll be back tomorrow with another best bet, another pick, another game. And until then, thanks for listening. I'll catch you later.